track it, and track it.
Your hustle got to be strong in this industry, as in any other industry.
Alright guys, so I wanted to talk to you about dry runs, cancellations, as far as the process, pay, just the nuances of what you deal with if you have a load cancel or a load dry run. Now, a dry run and a cancellation is, it can be one and the same. Normally, a dry run is when you've been at the shipper waiting for the freight and they decide it's not going to go. Whether the parts didn't get finished, parts didn't make it to the cross dock, whatever it may be. But that's normally what's considered a dry run. Now, the pay for those, they vary. There are even some that won't pay. That's one of the things with what goes on out here as far as the carrier you're with, the quality of the carrier you're with, as far as the connections they have. Because sometimes, if you're dealing with a smaller carrier that doesn't have many connections or good connections, they may get screwed out of getting anything for a dry run, because they're dealing with brokers that are just shady. So that's a whole nother story, but that's what can happen. There can be a varying amount of money, if any, on a dry run. Normally, I'd say on average, you're going to get somewhere right around 50 to 75 bucks. I shouldn't say average, but the normal range is somewhere between 50 and 75 bucks. Sometimes it can be as high as 150 bucks, 200 bucks, and I'm talking vans only. I'm not talking about straight trucks or semis or anything like that. I'm talking about with the van. Now, what can affect that amount is, the amount of miles you had to deadhead to get to it. Maybe you did an extremely large deadhead and, it dry ran on you. You're probably going to get a higher amount than if the load was within 50 miles from you and you went there. For example, I had 2 dry runs in one day just about a week or so ago. I got a total of $250 for the 2 combined. One was 150 bucks, the other one was 100 bucks. And mind you, that was from the same broker/customer. The $150 one, I had driven a little over 300 miles. Actually, not a little over 300. I think it was like 380 miles. I think that's what that was, if I can recall correctly. It's right around 380 on the miles to get to it. And then on the second one, that one was only 50 miles. So just to kind of make up for it, it's they have a good relationship, so they was able to get a decent pay for the dry run. I've had dry runs. As I said, I've experienced no pay for a dry run before. But always be sure that if a load cancels or dry runs, as I'm talking, and I'm distinguishing dry run as though you're there, you've gotten to the shipper, on the agreed upon time, not 5 hours early or 10 hours early, but within an hour of the agreed upon pickup time. And then that is what I'm considering a dry run. I'm on location, the load doesn't go through, and I get a dry run for it. Now, to talk about cancellations, and the reason there's a little bit of difference in the two is because a cancellation, more times than not, when you refer to it as a cancellation, you're not going to get paid for it. That's the norm out here, as far as in my experience. If any of you guys that have been doing this a while, if your experience is different, please feel free to share. But in my experience, a cancellation usually happens well before the agreed upon pickup time, or even before I've turned the key to head towards the pickup. You know, those are usually cancellations that you're not going to get paid for. Now, say you're en route, and again, once again, a time where you will get paid for the cancellation is, say you got a deadhead, a large deadhead, and you've driven half of it or a good portion of it. You've gotten a good ways into that deadhead to pick up. Then you're going to get some kind of pay for the load canceling. And the cancellation is also referred to as TONU, T-O-N-U, truck order not used. So those are some of the terms that you'll hear when it's referred to a load that is booked originally but doesn't happen. The three terms you'll most commonly hear: dry run, load cancel, and TONU. You know, for the most part, hearing that a load dry ran or canceled, it's usually seen negatively by us drivers for the most part. But there are dry runs and load cancellations that end up being a good thing, believe it or not. You know, the ones that hurt, the dry runs that sting, and the load cancellations that sting are the ones that are sizable miles. You know, say you're going from, the East Coast to West Coast. You know, maybe it's a 2,000, 3,000 mile run. And you're just like, yeah, man, this is going to be a sweet week. This is going to be a nice payday. You're all geared up for it. You get there, and it dry runs. And you're like, ugh. Just totally deflate you. Because you're just thinking about, man, you already had that money added up in your bank account, all that good stuff. You know, so that's when they sting. Those are the ones that hurt, man. Or maybe even, you know, the ones that are taking you, maybe you've been out on the road and it's taking you right to the house. Maybe it's taking you originally to a spot you really wanted to get to. Or it's a weekend load and it's starting to be late evening. Those ones sting. And on top of that, the ones that piss you off, not even a sting. Like, the difference between what I'm about to say is the ones that sting, those are just a disappointment, because it was like, it's just something you was looking forward to about that load. Okay? Now, when they piss you off on top of stinging is when you've sat there for hours upon hours. Say you got there at 1 o'clock. You're sitting there until, say, 6, 7 o'clock. You know, you've got all that time you've been sitting there telling you, oh, yeah, we're waiting, it's waiting, you know, we're still waiting. So you get some sleep and everything, you're all prepped and ready to go, and then they cancel. Those ones piss you off because now you've just lost that day. You might get some, that's going to be another instance real quick to where maybe it's going to be a higher amount given for the dry run, because you sat there for so much time and then it canceled. So you're going to get, you know, usually going to get a little bit more on those ones as well. But those ones piss you off because you lost a day. Like, yeah, it's cool that, you know, you got that money for sitting there and everything, but you just lost a day, man. I mean, a day run at that time, running you all day and then all night, and then you're delivering it the next day. I mean, that's anywhere from 500 miles to 1,000 miles that you just lost, you know. Anywhere from a $500 to $1,000 paycheck close to. So now you're just pissed, like son of a biscuit, man. Like, and then don't let it be a Friday too. Don't let it be a Friday and that happens, because now you're doubly pissed, you know. Because, and then if you're in a spot that isn't good for weekend freight, now you're like, man, now I'm freaking hitting until Monday. You're just pissed off. You know, you ain't got nobody to be pissed off at besides just the customer in general. Just your because it ain't dispatch's fault. It ain't your company's fault. You know, it ain't your fault. It's not even the worker's fault that you're dealing with in shipping. You know, it just happens. That's why it's hard to be pissed off at anybody, and it makes it so frustrating. Now, the ones that you're happy about. And again, for instance, the one I had where I had those 2 in one day, that ended up working out for the best. Because the first one, I'm trying to remember where the first one was going to, the dry ran. I want to say it was going to like Oklahoma or something. It was going somewhere kind of odd. It was going somewhere I wasn't really thrilled about going, but it was a load. I mean, you're coming out of Texas, so you're not going to turn shit down. And then the second one that canceled, now that one would have been going to Michigan, which would have been nice. So it was disappointing to not get that one. But at the same time, what I did end up getting on that same weekend was that load going up to Michigan and then a second drop in Ohio, which I was able to get my full rate of 95 cents out, whereas the other one would have probably been 80 cents. I think that's what it was going to be, is 80 cents. So that turned out way better. You know, there's other times that, you know, maybe it's a load going to just some middle of nowhere spot that you just really aren't happy about going, but you're going to go. You know, you're just going to go and you're going to do it. You know, and those cancel or dry run, those ones are the ones you're happy about. And you still have the whole day. Like, say it happened at like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock in the morning. It dry ran and it was a shit run. You're just like, phew. I had one of those about a month ago. I was sitting in a great freight area. I think it was in the Chicago area. And they called and they was giving me a load. I think it was something like Illinois to Iowa or something kind of short and not really good. You know, not a good landing spot for another load. So I was just like, man, like this kind of sucks. You know, I was hoping for something better. When you're in a good freight area, I mean, you're hoping for a Laredo run most of the time. Most of us that are really, you know, out to try and, you know, put them miles in, you're hoping for a Laredo run. You want something that's 1,000 miles plus, full rate going in, and, you know, you get to get your miles together. So when you get called in a good freight area for, say, a little short customer run or something like that, you're just like, oh, damn it. But you take them. And that's a whole nother story right there, but something you need to be mindful of. That's why you just take everything that comes at you, because you never know when that good flow is just going to hit you, as far as like you're going to get lucky and get this load. You got a load out of somewhere you didn't anticipate, and the loads just start coming, man. Because sometimes you get in a run like that, no matter where you land, you get a load. The most oddest spot, you end up getting a load. But anyhow, when those dry run, like that one did to me, it was a short one I didn't want. When that dry ran, I was happy. Actually, it didn't even dry run. It canceled. Like, I didn't even leave the parking lot yet. I had just got the call, got in front, started the van, was letting the van warm up, got the call that it canceled. I was like, shit, I'm cool. But I still had the whole day. And I did. I got another load that day. Happened later in the afternoon, going to a better spot. So, yeah, I was definitely happy about that one. So don't think just because you get a load canceled or anything that it's a bad thing. You know, sometimes it can be for the best. And the other thing about knowing whether it worked out or not is at the end of the week. That's just on a side note to what I'm talking about right now. One of the most common things that I see people that are new. Now, I shouldn't even say new. A lot of drivers do. Most of them are newer and haven't been out here very long. But they emotionally react to a dry run, a certain happening within the last couple of days. Their pay week isn't over, okay? And they're frustrated and they're complaining. You know, man, I only got 300 miles for the week, man. You know, and maybe they're halfway through their week. You always got to let the week play out before you can complain about the week. In all seriousness, I've said this over and over to drivers. My brother, you know, Dell, you know, there's been a lot of guys. Just the week ain't over. Wait and see what happens. Because within a day or two, your entire week, the complexion of how your week looks after 1 or 2 days can change in an instant. All it takes is that one good run, that one good 1,000+ mile run, taking you to a good spot, get reloaded right away, go to the next one. Next thing you know, what you had midway through the week, you had 300, you end the week with 2,300 miles. You know, that can happen. So don't get too emotionally invested in things, you know, each day, each load. Look at your results. Look at the end of the week. Look at the end of the month. Look over a 3-month span. You know, look at, you know, track everything. See how things are going overall. Because same thing with when you're having a bad, maybe you've had a bad week. Maybe you did just have a shit week and you only ended up with, say, 1,300 miles, 1,200 miles. And you're like, man, this sucks. And maybe it happened 2 weeks in a row. You're frustrated, you're bitching, you're pissy. You know, you're starting to get some of them thoughts creeping up on you again about how dispatch is trying to screw you, and, you know, what you're trying to think about, what did you do wrong for them to be pissed off at you and do this to you. That's why you got to track what you're doing, because then you can look at your numbers. When you look at your numbers, you're like, oh, okay, man, I'm still averaging, you know, over 10,000 miles for, you know, per month. My rates are good. My deadhead is down. You know, all of the things are tracking according to what you want them to track. So you just got to be mindful, man. Don't let each load and each day color how you feel about what's going on. Track it, and track it. All right, guys, so I'm going to get on off of here, and I will holler at you guys later.